You ready? Okay. Welcome to the Newton Council meeting of May 29th, 2019. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we take the roll, please?
Mr. Dixon?
Here.
Mrs. Diglio?
Here.
Mr. Flynn?
Here.
Mr. Schlaffer?
Here.
Mayor LaFois?
Here. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this regular meeting was given to the two newspapers of record and posted on the official bulletin board on January 4th, 2019. You all received the minutes from the May 13th regular and the May 13th special meeting. Do we have any additional amendments, deletions, corrections, omissions, anything? All right.
I said we're going to have
Yep.
time.
Okay, can I entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the May 13th regular and special minutes.
Second?
I have a motion to approve the May 13th regular and special meeting minutes by Councilman Dixon, a second by Deputy Mayor Flynn. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Diglio?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Schlaffer?
Yes.
Mayor LaFois?
Yes. At this point in the meeting, the Town Council welcomes comments from any member of the public on any topic to help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit the opportunity for anyone who wishes to be heard. Speakers are asked to take one turn at the microphone and please limit their comments to 5 minutes. The clerk will keep time. If reading from a prepared statement, please provide a copy and email a copy to the clerk's office after making your comments so it may be properly reflected in the minutes. Do we have any public comments at this time? Okay, seeing none. We'll close that portion of the meeting. We'll move on to council and manager reports. After our last meeting on May 15th, the planning board had the regular meeting, but the master plan reexamination review committee continues to do their work of that plan, of which we should be getting something soon. The next day, on the 16th, I attended Wine and Roses to benefit Newton Medical Center and the foundation. I think there were about 700 people that were there. It was nice to see lots of Newton residents and businesses there and participating. A beautiful evening, so want to congratulate Newton Medical Center and the foundation for a well-done event, and the money is raised. The same day we had visitation for Lexi, and it was an amazing turnout. I know it took me an hour, I think, online just to get to the door, and the Fay family was very appreciative of the council's recognition and moment of silence at the last meeting. The town continues to support the family, so just wanted to thank the council for everyone's attendance and support over the last couple of weeks. This past Monday, Councilman Dixon and I attended the Memorial Day Parade and the services. I want to give special recognition to Councilwoman Diglio, who not only worked for many, many months organizing the event, and lots of people on Monday were talking about how the event couldn't have happened without you, but even the day of, when you were short-staffed, literally on your own for parade setup, Sandy, you need to call us next year. You were able to, grab a couple people and get everything lined up. And Councilman Dixon and I were standing there in line, and literally at 10 o'clock on the dot, that parade took off. So not only did you have everything in order, but you had perfect weather, which I'm sure you also were in control of, and got that parade off right on time. So lots of great compliments from lots of people that I talked to, and I think of all the parades that are held in the town of Newton every year, that one to me is the most special, and certainly the services afterwards are poignant and heartfelt, and our veterans appreciate the recognition of their comrades that didn't come home with them, and the ability for us to recognize some veterans that landed on the beaches in Normandy still. One veteran that was 104 years old, 102 years old, and their families. I know afterwards I went to the ceremonies over at the BFW as well, and we're talking to some of the family members who, couldn't be more proud. And one of the honorees is the uncle of a family friend, and the family friend said to me, it was, I think, David, and he said, so my uncle served in Vietnam. My other uncle served in the Desert Storm Middle East conflicts. He goes, my grandfather, my father, like they're served, and he goes, and now my son is serving. And he goes, so for so many of the families that come out to the parade every year, it's not just another parade and another service, but it's something that's meaningful. So thank you for your hard work for many months leading up to the day. And then as we continue to, maintain good contact with other elected officials, it was nice of both Governor Murphy's team and Congressman Gottheimer's staff to reach out to me via email and phone earlier today and late last night to just make sure that everybody in Newton was okay with the storms that came through, and, assured them that our OEM and emergency services and everyone was on standby, but all was well except for some outages, which of course they knew about as well. So that's my updates for now. Deputy Mayor Flynn.
I have nothing at this time.
Councilwoman Diglio.
Okay. I actually prepared them for you. All right. But anyway, May 18th, I attended the memorial service for the American Revolutionary War veterans. Honored were Thomas Anderson, John Cush, Matthew Davis, John Drake, Samuel Hardin, Jacob Hendershot, John Holmes, Henry Johnson, Richard Lloyd, Charles Pemberton, Theodorus Polhemus, and Letita Thornton Anderson. I have to admit it was a very moving and enlightening ceremony as the bios of each individual and their accomplishments were read. On May 21st, there was a chamber meet and greet held at the Sussex County Arts and Heritage Council. Those that attended had the opportunity to enjoy the art exhibit, which, by the way, was phenomenal, the refreshments, and to learn about each other, exchange their cards. On May 23rd, I attended the Sussex County League of Municipality meeting at the Mohawk House. The presenters discussed how all the various agencies in Sussex County are working together in the event of a mass shooting. A simulator was set up, and all were invited to take part in various scenarios to see how fast one could recognize a situation and how fast one would react. And it was very interesting to see. If you hesitated, yeah, you were gone. The shooter got you. But on May 28th, the CLEAR meeting was held at 12 noon, and there were many updates, including Change for Change, Operating Helping Hand, Operation Clear Cling, the coach program, etc. There was a discussion on how the program is helping people get clean and how some of those that have gotten clean are giving back to the community by helping others to get clean. I am very proud of this program, and I thank Becky Carlson and Chief Richards, as well as all the other individuals involved in the program, because it really is beginning to make a difference here in Sussex County. And May 27th, I had the honor and privilege of directing the Memorial Day Parade and the memorial service at Memory Park. The parade and service are held to honor those that have given their lives to protect our freedoms. A special thanks to the Hans family, the Newton High School Band, the VFW, and the American Legion veterans, and finally to all those who came to honor the fallen. This is the reason for Memorial Day, to honor those that have passed.
Good stuff. Councilman Schlaffer.
Nothing for me tonight.
Councilman Dixon.
All right. I just want to thank all the businesses and everyone who participated in the Newton Strong efforts on May 23rd. The community really shined in a time of darkness, and it was an incredible showing of unity. So thank you, everybody, for that. Thank you to Councilwoman Diglio and the entire parade committee for all their hard work and dedication to the Memorial Day Parade. It was a poignant tribute and an absolutely beautiful day. The Board of Ed met last night, and as I had said in the last meeting, that the board's purchase wasn't completely a done deal on Gardner, and as of now, the board will not be purchasing that property. The homeowner is going to be listing it on his own. I guess there were some issues that the owner wanted to close by July 1st, and that wasn't going to give the board any time to get any sort of the soil testing, the water testing, anything like that they were going to be required to get done prior to the purchase of it. So right now, that's kind of a done deal. That's all I have for the moment.
And that was for the offices?
Yeah, that was for the offices over on 4 Gardner.
Mr. Russo.
First, we have a couple applicants so far for the DPW summer help, so I'll keep you posted, but I think we have a couple good candidates thus far. We did send correspondence to DCA regarding the rooming houses based on our conference call. I thank Ursula for pulling that together with Chief Richards and myself, so that was going out to DCA. I wanted to pass around the Newton Day flyer that Kimberly and I put together with our marketing firm. Came out nice, so you'll start to see those floating around different businesses and throughout the town promoting Newton Day on June 8th. We have the Miss Newton contest. We're still looking for more contestants for that.
Tom, you want to give the details on that date, time, application?
Well, June 8th is Miss Newton at 11 a.m. Newton Day is at 10:30. They can contact the rec department for information on the Miss Newton contest, but we still need contestants. It's a $1,000 scholarship this year for Miss Newton, so it's the largest that we've ever done, and hopefully we'll get some heightened interest. Newton Day itself, 10:30 to 4, and then we have the evening activities. We have a live band this year, thanks to the generosity of Thor Labs. We have all the other activities. We have the expanded fireworks with a section dedicated to the memory of Lexi Fay and other special things to go on with the fireworks. So hopefully the weather will be better than it is today, and we'll have a very good turnout for Newton Day. Next up, a couple updates to share on the Babe Ruth field. I received a correspondence from Suburban Consulting regarding their scope of work activities. Thus far, coordination and collection of any available local-related mapping documents from Harold Pello's office. They've also obtained and reviewed current FEMA mapping studies related to Moores Brook. They've done a field survey has been performed to prepare topographic base mapping, including drainage system pipe sizes, inverts, and inlet grate elevations within the surrounding project site. Soil samples have been taken within outfield areas and sent to the Rutgers soil testing labs for analysis. The tested soil has a poor permeability factor rating of K1. Piezometers set at key locations within the ball field to monitor groundwater conditions. They were monitored on a weekly basis through April and biweekly during May, and are scheduled to be completed at the end of June. Water levels observed within outfield locations are relatively shallow, below the existing grade. There have been minor fluctuations in the readings at each observation to date. An environmental condition site visit was conducted by both Suburban certified wetland scientist and project manager to assess soil characteristics and DEP permitting constraints. Suburban supervised coordination with DPW staff that utilize a backhoe to expose the clogged and surcharged field type E inlet near third base area to determine what piping drains into and out of the structure, and to then locate and uncover the buried outfall location. Efforts confirm that the drainage system outfall location is buried within wetland soil vegetation, thus negating the ability to drain any piped stormwater. Evaluation of the stormwater runoff currently piped into the drainage system, including ways to reduce or separate contributing flows. One potential alternative under consideration includes separating the piping network from Moran Street and the upper ball field, collected via inlets directly opposite the parking lot, to be rerouted along Moran towards the Moores Brook culvert. So that's the update on Babe Ruth. Update on the pool, on their scope of work activities. They've coordinated and obtained local related mapping documents from Harold Pello's office, including the 2005 renovation plans, coordinated with DPW and SESI Consulting regarding geotech borings, which are scheduled to take place May 31st. Coordination with DPW to obtain access and draining of the pool for Suburban's field survey scan of the pool, which was produced in AutoCAD format. That was done early April. Coordination with the pool consultant, their pool consultant, Atlantic Aquatic Engineering, to perform a site inspection and prepare a draft report along with recommendations. Site inspection was done mid-April. They're hoping to use the geotech borings report information to support the final report. So that's the update on the pool. And one last thing to go over. If you'll indulge me here. All right, so we've had some conversations, and definitely, council and myself, and specifically the mayor and the deputy mayor recently, to talk about ways to do things to provide recreation opportunities for children and families this summer. If you recall, we budgeted the $14,000 for non-aquatic activity. We have our rec supervisor, Michelle, working on planning for June, July, August of some activities. We've hired Mr. Lasso from the school district to assist as a rec coordinator, which is why ordinance 2019-4 is on, along with violations clerk. But I have some good news to report that I'd like to share with the council and the public. So we're working on an interim pool season, if you will, for 2019. And we are going to work on a relationship with the Hackettstown Community Pool, so I'm proud to announce that we have an agreement to utilize their pool this summer. We're looking at Monday through Thursdays, so July 1st, this would commence through August 29th. There will be no service on July 4th, but we're looking at Monday through Thursday in July and August. This would be available to residents of the town of Newton, Andover Borough, Andover Township, and Greene Township, and reservations would be made through Sign Up Genius, which is an online registration portal. Bus would leave Memory Park at 11:30 a.m., arrive at the Hackettstown Community Pool at approximately 12:15. The bus is being supplied by the Newton School District and will accommodate up to 50 guests. The town of Newton will pay for the bus, the driver, and the fuel, and provide any appropriate certificates of insurance, hold harmless agreements, etc., as required. Obviously, any pool entrance fees, concessions, stand, food, beverage options, and activities are the responsibility of each participant, just as if they were coming to the Newton pool. Bus will leave Hackettstown Community Pool at 5 p.m. and return to Memory Park in Newton approximately 5:45 p.m. The town is hiring the previous Newton pool manager, Jackie Fredenzi, who came to the meeting tonight, to accompany participants each day. All Hackettstown Community Pool rules and regulations govern operations and pool behavior. Participants have to be 16 years of age or be accompanied by an adult or legal guardian. And if someone needs to leave early, they have to make their own travel arrangements, but they do have to let Jackie know so she can keep track of who's on the bus and who's returning. I'd like to thank Dr. Green and the Newton Board of Education for assisting us with the utilization of the school bus and the services of a trained bus driver for this important community endeavor. And a big thumbs up to my new best friend, Joe Yapola, the rec director in Hackettstown, for his support. Very nice man, and he was very accommodating and supportive. So I want to thank him publicly for his support because it was very important. And last, certainly not least, I have a prop. I said I would do it, so, you know.
To put the Thor Labs hat on, that's right.
So, all right, so this program is made possible by the generosity of Thor
Where's
Labs.
the paper?
They've made a new donation of $12,000 to our Recreation Trust account. So I want to thank Alex Cable for his steadfast support and commitment to the town of Newton, because that's what's financing this whole endeavor. And obviously, I want to thank the residents for their patience during this time. And, you know, we look forward to offering this interim option as well as the non-aquatic recreational activities to help residents and families have a wonderful and fun time this summer. So to me, you know, we're giving people a lot of choices, and I think it works out well for everybody.
And we're still going to continue with, as you mentioned, the non-aquatic recreational activities.
Michelle's
so-
already working on that schedule. We have things to do with the park. We have, you know, Saturday with the Stags. We're going to do art. We're going to do field day. We're going to do all kinds of endeavors. We're going to do bus trips. We're going to do as much as we can to accommodate people and to give them things to do for the summer. But I think this is a reasonable compromise to, you know, to help people out, that if they want to swim and they have an option, and we're providing the transportation thanks to the generosity of Alex and Thor Labs.
Yeah, and I hope that the bus is filled every day. I know this came together in pretty short order. Had conversations, obviously, Deputy Mayor Flynn, Councilman Dixon as our Board of Ed rep. I know there was some conversation at the Board of Ed meeting.
Yes,
Do you have some additional questions, or do you think some of this answers?
There was some conversation last night. They were very supportive of it. But most of the questions actually were answered. The fuel was one thing
Yeah,
they
I
brought
spoke to
up.
Dr.
Yeah, they were going to take care of the maintenance. The fuel was one thing.
Well, that's how quick this is moving, right? I mean, these were questions like
it's-
last
everything's
night.
going
and then,
so fast.
Yeah.
The only thing, I guess, really that I didn't hear answered in it was about the bus leaves at 11:30, gets there, 2 o'clock it starts raining. The bus isn't going to be there.
Yeah, we're going to have to try to make accommodation to get the bus back
That was
earlier.
their-
I've budgeted as many hours as I can for the bus driver. Dr. Green wanted really a couple hours to and from, so, you know, we'll have to figure out a way, and Jackie can work with the bus driver and Dr. Green on how to accommodate. Because, you do run the risk of, you get there and it's nice, and an hour later, the whole day is changed.
Yeah,
But
it's
to
just-
me, that's something we can work through. At least we have the bus available and the driver, and, you know, I think it works out.
Yeah, they were very supportive and very excited to be able to offer the bus to help this out.
Yeah.
So.
And certainly Jackie, having Jackie's experience of
Yeah.
managing the pool for so many years, is well versed in making those calls of close, no close, watching the thunderstorms. And obviously we'll have to work with the recreation staff there at the Hackettstown pool to shore up those kinds of decisions.
So that's my report.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom on
Just
this?
one, did he say that people would have to sign a hold harmless for liability purposes?
No, we have to do a certificate of insurance for the school district and then one with Hackettstown. And, they're treating it as if this was a bus trip, a recreation bus trip. But I think, I think those are details that we can work on and flesh out, but I think it'll work out. And I spoke to the Mitchell agency. I covered, our base on the insurance end. I spoke to Michael there, and he said, this is treated as if, like when we're doing a bus trip to the Bronx Zoo, Camel Beach, medieval times we're doing, like, it's the same.
It's
the
all
same
same-
principle,
same
right? You're on the
principle.
bus, you're getting taken to and from. But I think the reward is greater than the risk, and I think it's just a nice opportunity. And, I like the fact that it's a municipal pool. If there's anything we can ever do to help them, it's nice to have a reciprocal arrangement, right? So, and I think it, obviously brings guests and visitors to there. And, maybe people want to do a membership, maybe they want to do something else because, we're bringing people there Monday through Thursday, which isn't their busy time, right? They're busier Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so that was an accommodation to help them.
That they asked for,
Yeah,
right?
so we're bringing 50 people a day, hopefully, and it really works out well for everybody.
So I know that we're still fine tuning some of the details. Tom, thanks for pulling it together so quickly. In terms of promotion of this and links to
part of
Sign
the
Up Genius and all that.
funding from Thor Labs we're going to use to promote. I wanted to announce it tonight. Obviously, the Herald and Tap will make sure it goes out through our media channels, through our partners there, and then our social media. And, we have some time to
Website.
ramp up with it. We can promote it at Newton Day itself. So, it's good. We got 4 weeks to really push this.
Yeah.
Did you have any conversation with Dr. Green, maybe promoting it through the schools too?
Yeah, definitely. We'd like to do that too. But, I wanted to make sure I had all my bases covered because really I pulled most of this together on Friday. This was my Friday. But it just, each piece fell into place, so each thing built on.
One phone call led to the next, right?
Yeah, so it worked out well.
And we do have until July 1st to get the word out.
Yeah.
So similarly to the way that we disseminated information with regards to the pool work that needed to be done, we can use
Yeah.
the similar channels for promoting the alternative plan. Good, thank you. Tom, anything else right
No,
now?
that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to ordinances. We have a second reading and public hearing regarding ordinance 2019-4. This is an ordinance to include violations clerk and recreation coordinator in the town salary ordinance. This was introduced at the last council meeting. Can I have a motion to open the hearing to the public?
I'll make a motion to open the hearing to the public.
Second?
I have a motion to open the hearing to the public by Councilwoman Diglio and a second by Deputy Mayor Flynn. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone from the public on this ordinance?
Seeing nobody coming forward, I'll offer a motion to close that portion of the hearing.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Flynn to close the hearing, a second by Councilman Dixon. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, do I have a motion to act on the ordinance?
I'll make a motion to act on ordinance 2019-4. Okay.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion to act on ordinance 2019-4 by Councilwoman Diglio and a second by Councilman Schlaffer. All roll call vote, please.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Diglio?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Schlaffer?
Yes.
Mayor LaBrus?
Yes. We have introduction of ordinance 2019-5. This is an ordinance amending section 320.2 and 320.3 of the Code of the Town of Newton. This is just an introduction this evening.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance 2019-5.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion to introduce ordinance 2019-5 by Councilwoman Diglio and a second by Deputy Mayor Flynn. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Diglio?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Schlaffer?
Yes.
Mayor LaBrus?
Yes. We have no old business tonight. Next up is a consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the Town Council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. So we have 4 resolutions. Tom, can you go
Yeah,
through
very
them?
briefly, we have the fireworks display at Memory Park for Newton Day. We have Vicky Hall to Economic Development. She had already been interviewed for Planning Board and had expressed interest. And the Economic Development Commission, I think she'll be an asset. We have the vacation sick leave payout for Scott, for Titus, and then bills and vouchers.
Any questions? Anything need to be discussed further?
Just one question, will Vicky still remain on the planning board as well?
Yes.
Yep. I had a couple conversations with her about that. She's excited about her service to the town of Newton, and she's eager to learn as much as possible and continues to take the job seriously. Any other discussion items on the consent agenda? All right, can I have a motion?
I'll offer a motion on the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion to move the consent agenda by Deputy Mayor Flynn and a second by Councilman Dixon. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Diglio?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Schlaffer?
Yes.
Mayor LaFois?
Yes. All right, so we have two items for discussion tonight, and they are with regards to draft ordinances that you have all received via the Google Drive.
Mayor, perhaps we could do soil disturbance, since we have our engineer Dave Simmons here, and then we can switch back to animals, if that's okay.
For sure. So
Dave, you want to come up, please?
you should be opening the Town of Newton Ordinance 2019-C.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Simmons, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Mayor.
Also known as Town Historian on all things engineering.
There we go.
So if you would just want to review the ordinance, the purpose of the ordinance, point out any significant items of discussion, and we'll kind of go from there.
Certainly, no problem. Just looking at the ordinance briefly in the sections, the first section talks about the definitions. One of the concerns with the definition is, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion in different municipalities about contaminated soil and bringing that on site. So a lot of the first 2 or 3 pages talk about the definitions and the testing that would be required to help make sure the good folks in Newton don't get involved in any importation of soil that's contaminated. With regards to soil importation, there's some requirements as far as the testing goes. There's also some exemptions if you're putting in a septic system and you have to bring in select fill. And one of the things that the planning board had a concern about was if someone was doing a relatively minor project at their home, would they be exempted from that? And on page 4 of the ordinance, as I printed it out, section 241-3B talks about routine landscaping activities that do not require in excess of 50 cubic yards would be, for residential, would be exempted. And just to put that in perspective, a normal tandem dump truck would bring around 15 cubic yards, roughly. So basically, you're talking about roughly 3 truckloads of soil brought into someone's house. And we're not talking now the small mason trucks, we're talking a tandem. So it's quite a bit of material that gets exempted, so it's not overly burdensome to a residential homeowner. And we tried to look at the whole town of Newton from the standpoint that the vast majority of the building lots in the town are already developed. For residential situations, for the most part, they're relatively small lots compared to 5-acre large tracts out in the surrounding municipalities. So we thought that was a reasonable amount of soil to have exempted.
For sure.
There's also talks about the fees, which we'll get to at the end, but suffice it to say, one of the concerns was, again, by the planning board, that if they had a situation where someone on a residential lot wanted to import, say, up to 50 cubic yards, would there be a fee? And the recommendation was to make that fee 0. So for someone getting a couple loads of mulch or a couple loads of topsoil to do their normal landscaping work as they might enjoy around their home, they wouldn't be burdened with a fee for that type of work. The next thing we talked about was grading. And they tried to come up with some reasonable limits as far as what would be exempted from the ordinance. And again, on page 7, if you're 1,000 square feet or less of new impervious area or 2,500 square feet or more of new to soil disturbance, you would be exempted if you were less than that. And to put in perspective, 1,000 square feet, roughly about 5 parking spaces, 10 foot by 20 foot, just to put it in perspective. 2,500 square feet, about a dozen parking spaces roughly for those waivers. And with regards to the grading permit review and the fees for that type of project, they kept most of those permit fees relatively reasonable, I think, as shown on page 10 of the ordinance. There is the provision, though, if we did have to get involved with some of the larger pieces of property, say towards the perimeter of the township where there's commercial area, then there was a reservation to allow our office as the town engineers to come up with a reasonable escrow to handle those type of areas. They didn't want to overly burden residential lots with fees for small grading projects, just to make sure there weren't any drainage issues or any other issues causing problems to their neighbors. But by the same token, if you got involved with some large tract, that way it's handled on an individual basis, and it didn't seem to us that that private property owner on a residential situation was getting overburdened. And that's basically the ordinance.
So number 2, under the soil grading permit, page 10.
Okay.
The lot grading permit to 1,000 square feet of impervious, 2,500 square feet of disturbance. Was that to say with lot grading plan? I'm confused. Is that's 50, and then number 3 below it is 300? Would you be? Oh, it's 150. I'm sorry.
150, yeah.
150. Well, the question still stands. What is, like, you're saying one is like substantially like altering the grade, and the other would just be like, say, like the removal and replacement of a large driveway?
Yes.
That's the difference?
Yeah, one of the main concerns is if there's some grading that inadvertently causes drainage runoff to an area on your adjoining property owner that's not occurring now, so we don't have a situation like that.
You would mitigate it just through common sense recommendations, I'm assuming, if the plan.
That's the intent.
Not like, I mean, you can do a lot grading plan and say like Milburn, and it's like they require everything just short of a site plan, so that's not what the applicant would be burdened with.
No, we're trying, for the most part, especially the residential lots, since again, you're talking relatively small lots, to come up with a reasonable grading plan, and as you just mentioned, look at it in the field just to make sure they're not grading something towards someone's pool in their backyard on the adjacent lot, that type of thing.
Oh, you're saying not submitting a grading plan then, like prepared by an engineer?
Well, there is
For that amount of,
for that amount of
yeah, for that amount. I mean,
area.
anything larger.
Relatively small area.
Where do we draw the line at what becomes larger, though? More than 2,500 square feet of disturbance, and then it gets.
Then you start to get involved in a plot plan showing your grading and any drainage, and especially if you go out there and look at the site, and I'm not saying what if they're near wetlands or anything like that.
Well, I'm not questioning that the fees proposed are high by any means. I think they're reasonable, to say the least, for what your company would be asked to do.
So we're talking about three fee structures going from like less than 1,000, 1,000 to 2,500, or 2,500 or more being $0, $150, and then 300 above that, to cover some of that, the engineering perhaps that needs to be done, or just the inspections.
That's right.
Right, prior to work. So this would still fall under applications that would be made to planning and zoning, that like the planning board, or is it just directly through an application to?
I believe this would be a separate permit. If someone has an existing lot or an existing home, and they decided, all right, we want to fill in our backyard or regrade our backyard to make a plateau for parking, turning around areas, that type of thing. This isn't necessarily something that would come before the planning board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, okay.
And if you were coming before the planning board because you needed a variance for a setback, or, let's talk in the sense of residential, not commercial.
Yeah, this is all
You were
residential.
burdened by some kind of law constraint, so you had to come to the planning board to get a variance. You wouldn't need to additionally get this permit, because that would be taken care of in the or correct me if I'm wrong, because you would be applying for a larger, you'd have to submit surveys and engineering plans just
You'd
to
have all that application information anyway.
And that's what I was getting at. Let's say this was, okay, if it's an isolated project and it's a driveway, that's one thing, but if it's part of a larger, a residential project, it would be part of the plan, but not necessarily have to be, like it's a separate permit, like with the rest of the permits that we have. You know what I mean? Like it all of a sudden doesn't come under additional scrutiny because it's part of a larger plan,
Sure.
right? Okay.
So if it's part of a larger plan, then they won't need to.
They wouldn't need to be talking to this
talk
part of
to
the
this
ordinance and
it.
another
Only
part
if
of the
they
ordinance.
come to do
Right.
a small scale,
It's not uncommon that I see this in lots of other small built-out towns, because, I mean, you can adversely affect the drainage of another lot by, if you wanted to raise your lot by 14 inches, I mean, and just pitch all your drainage
Right.
directly to the neighbor, I mean, that would cause an impact, and it would be difficult to get that mitigated after the fact.
That's why they're gonna have the site visits for all this stuff too.
At that higher level of disturbance or additional impervious
I mean,
area.
2 years ago, I removed and replaced my driveway. It's a very standard-sized driveway. 2 dump truck loads came out, 2 dump truck loads came in, and the grade didn't really change at all. I mean, you're talking like maybe an inch or 2, but nothing abnormal. So that would have fallen under it might have been less than it just would have been omitted from the.
That's right.
Right, because it's the 2 trucks
Less than
and
the
you're.
50 cubic
right.
yards. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it in perspective of how many cubic yards are in a truck, and then
Right.
now you're talking about 1,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet, I mean, that's a lot of,
Everybody, I think, thought that was a reasonable limit for most lots here in Newton. For
Yeah.
the type of things they're going to get involved in.
right,
Lots are half acre.
not restrictive.
Bringing in multiple dump truck loads is a lot.
Yes.
I mean, your neighbor would
So the
raise
preliminary
it.
site visit is only on items 2 and 3 that have fees attached to them. The first one here, lot grading, where there's no fee attached to it, would not include a site visit.
Right, it's just a permit.
Okay.
That's correct.
I just think in the ordinance, it should be, I'm just a little confused between 1, 2, and 3. Like, 1 is obviously minor and is a 0 fee. Okay, I get that. And then 2 should say without substantial grading. I mean, do we need to quantify that?
Basically, if it's an area where we could meet on site with the property owner, they could discuss and describe what they're proposing to do, and it becomes obvious that they're not going to do anything that's going to provide adverse impact on drainage to their neighbor, it's going off in the woods in the rear, that type of thing. That's
Yep.
where that comes in.
But I think
Okay.
what Deputy Mayor Flynn is asking is that the language between 2 and 3 is,
How is 2 different?
2 and 3 as it stands right now, based on the corrections that we have, the version that we have, say the exact same thing.
With no.
Because it's crossed out the with a log grading plan. I think that's what you're referring to, Dan, right?
Yeah, I was curious.
Do you see that,
The
Ursula?
description of 3 should say, like, 1,000 square feet of impervious, which is pretty substantial. It's not, like, put 1,000 square foot addition on a house, it's a lot. Or 2,500 square foot of disturbance, so that would be like redoing your front yard completely, grading it up. But
Or-
it should say this, in conjunction, I would think, it should say in conjunction with significant contour changes or some kind of, wouldn't that be the definitive?
Or tell us what the language might be missing from that.
The with lot, I think what basically happened is with lot grading plan just got erroneously deleted when we did the red line.
Okay.
And that would be back in 3.
Right, so 2 remain the same. 3 would say with lot grading plan, lot grading permit for land disturbance, blah, blah, blah. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So
Okay, so 3 does have a plan.
That's the
I
only
don't-
difference between 2 and
if-
3.
Maybe take another stab at wording it so that someone who is being directed by Kathy to the ordinance would be a little bit confused about with lot grading plan, like what that means. Must be.
Right, they might say what's going to drive the need for a lot grading plan.
Okay.
Retaining walls, I don't know if you want to put like, retaining walls greater than
Swales, whatever.
3 feet, swales.
Right, or perhaps define the lot grading, what a lot grading plan is, or what would necessitate a lot grading plan.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
maybe improve it a little bit so someone could be like, oh, this is me, I fall right here. Or that's, I'm falling into a number 3.
Okay.
Because I don't know that we define that anywhere else, right? Well, actually, we do. 241-13 on page 8 says the criteria for a lot grading permit review. So, okay, so then maybe that supersedes it, assuming that someone's gone through all this. So if they fall under that criteria, A through H, and then it's determined that they need a lot grading plan, then that would put them into number 3 under the permit.
Correct.
So that's what the assumption is, right,
Yes.
Dave? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So Dan,
So do we still put it in there on the fees? Or no?
well, what we could say to clarify is as per section
241-.
241-13 with a lot grading plan, comma, I think, because then if somebody skips to that section, what are my fees?
Right.
Right.
Then it makes reference back to
So
the
they
other
know where
section.
to reach the criteria. Okay.
Does that work for everybody? Okay. Ursula, does that work for you?
Oh, we'll work on it.
Okay. However,
I saw,
legal.
the one thing I did see in here was applicable soil erosion and sediment control plans per, I'm trying to find the, sorry, I lost my spot.
Bottom of page 7. C3.
what page?
Yeah, okay, that's
Bottom
it.
of page
So,
7.
soil erosion and sediment control permits are triggered by
5,000 square feet.
square feet or more. So are you saying that you would this then trigger a soil erosion sediment control plan at 2,500 square feet?
No, I remember we just kind of used the 2,500 as the distinguishment to get to that third category. If they're still not up to 5,000 square feet, then soil erosion wouldn't be applicable normally.
Yeah, and that would go to the county, and that's an expensive permit, so you know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and these days, sometimes with Warren and Sussex County combining, they end up sending it down to the state engineer. And as you just pointed out, the fees start to get up, so we're trying to keep this more on a local level if we can.
Yeah, that's how it should be, because I've had recently some bad experiences with them.
Okay?
And I know that, Tom, as you mentioned, there's lots of other municipalities that have had some recent issues. I mean, I know you've been working on this one for a little while. And again, preemptively, just so, not that we have some of the large parcels of land that the other municipalities have. I mean, some of the soil issues that they've been dealing with have been in very large parcels.
Yes.
We don't have those types of residential properties in town. Our land lots are very small, and what works in one municipality doesn't necessarily work in another, and vice versa. But we wanted to take a look at our ordinances to make sure that,
Yes, and that's why we stood back and said, what are we really dealing with here as far as the lot sizes go?
exactly, which is always the case, right? In Newton,
For the most part, yes.
yeah. And same thing when the DEP or other state agencies, start to make changes that affect land use. We'll take a look at our ordinances and see how they play out. Again, understanding the way that Newton is developed.
Correct.
And we're requiring a letter from a laboratory for a certified, basically clean fill.
Yes.
Is that from a laboratory, or if it's a company that's already been certified, approved by whomever? No, so that,
Well, if the company that is getting the material from a certain location has testing data, that's one thing.
Okay,
If they don't, the only way you can verify that it's not contaminated is to get it tested.
And you should want to do that if you're importing soil onto your own property
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
But, so what would a cost for a test like that be?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
I like the most common source of excess fill material in this area would be the excavation of a septic system on an adjacent parcel, and the contractor doesn't know how to get rid of the material. And generally, if it's, just vacant farmland, or it's likely clean, but it should be tested and verified prior to being.
I know, for example, speaking
don't have
personally,
septic,
when
right?
I've had underground oil tanks taken out, and they have to bring in clean fill, they have to get the certification from the quarry or whatever, wherever they got the material, that it is pollution-free, and provide that as part of the DEP documentation. And as you just pointed out, anyone who is bringing material, especially with everything that they've heard in the news media over the past several months, you'd want to protect yourself, rather than end up with a situation where, well, I solved
Go
the
to sell
grading
your
problem,
property,
but I
right.
got another problem now.
Oh, yeah.
As far as I can tell here, it would cost well under $100 to have it tested, so it's minimal.
For soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the logistics of getting it tested is
and the delay
'Cause
perhaps
usually
in what
it's
you
like,
thought was
oh.
going to be delivered.
I have soil from here. It's sitting on my truck.
Right. Yeah.
Would you look at the Rucker site?
I just did a quick search and just started checking out all the averages on here.
Okay, any other questions for Dave with regards to the ordinance, language in the ordinance? Anything else for us on this ordinance?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All set for tonight?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks very much.
no problem. Everybody have a good night.
You too. All right, next up is draft ordinance 2019-B. If everyone can open that ordinance. I'm sure you've all reviewed it. But Ursula, if you can give us a overview of the questions at hand and the options before the council.
Sure, so our current chapter 57 basically has 5 classes of animals.
Ursula, can I just ask you to move the microphone
Apologize.
so that everybody can hear you?
Thank you. Our current chapter 57 of the town code has 5 different classes of animals that included things like tigers and bears, horses, livestock, chickens, and dogs and cats. So what we tried to do was start with a definition of domestic animals to make that easier to understand. The current code also has provisions regarding waste materials, sheltering, and animals running at large. That animals running at large we kept the same in this draft ordinance. What we did is just define domestic animals more broadly, and I think that's where a lot of the policy questions are tonight. So it arose for 2 different reasons. One is, of course, chickens, and the other is pot-bellied or the mini pigs. Where do they fit in? Are they domestic animals? And do they require shelter or not? In addition to Chapter 57, which is our animal chapter, we also have Chapter 320 conditional uses, and within that, we have a farm and agricultural uses section, and in that it's 320-J. There's also requirements for structures and buildings and setbacks, but again, that's only when they're farms, so those are the 5 acres or more, and it's more of a larger livestock agricultural operation. So we're talking more for Chapter 57, only about the small domesticated animals. So as it's worded, domestic animals does not specifically speak to chickens, hens, roosters. And so when you look at different ordinances that exist around the area, some of them don't define them at all. Some of them restrict them to just say a certain number, whether it's 0, whether it's 1, 3, or 5 are the common numbers of hens only, obviously for the noise issue. And if you do allow them, a lot of the ordinances have sheltering, basically, sheltering and waste provisions. So that is covered for agricultural, but not for the domestic animals as it exists now, other than the provision in here regarding they're not running at large. So if we want to add further to the definition, that's the consideration for tonight. But basically, it's just trying to streamline it and making it easier for the zoning officer to know what's permitted, how many.
And so these definitions, as outlined in 57-1, came from where?
They came from working with Jessica Caldwell and Dave Soloway, the board attorney.
Okay.
So it's been worked and reworked, and then it's come to basically it's a policy decision as to what is desired.
And Dave Soloway's professional expertise as the planning board attorney is in land use throughout the state of New Jersey. And I think that's where he draws from, and he draws from lots of books that he brings to the planning board meetings. And I know the planning board discussed both of these ordinances and basically sent them back to the council for definitions because they didn't necessarily impact the land use or the planning board's
Zoning, per se.
zoning jurisdiction. Okay. So the questions before us tonight are defining domestic animals, right?
Right.
Reviewing the shelter and waste provisions, because right now they're only cared for in terms of livestock or
Right, the agriculture.
properties over, and agriculture, properties over 5 acres.
Correct.
And then any additional details, depending on the definition of domestic animals, with regards to types, quantity, grandfathered, not grandfathered, all those types of things that could be incorporated into the ordinance.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Where do you all want to start?
Let's start with the domestic animal and the final animals weighing more than 100 pounds as being excluded. You have dogs that weigh more than 100 pounds that are existing in this town already, so how can we possibly exclude them as being considered domestic?
I'm pretty sure we saw one at the parade, did we not?
Yeah.
He was the size of a bear.
Yes, he was huge.
That's what I'm saying.
So I think we
Since
can
it
put in
says
here other
including
than.
among other dogs, it already mentions dogs prior to that. Does that supersede the 100-pound?
Yeah, and we can put the word other in there, and I think it clarifies that doesn't include dogs and cats.
Okay.
Okay, and other animals weighing more, got it.
And I should have
Okay.
clarified, the planner, Jessica Caldwell, also reviewed this. I'm sorry, I didn't state that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Councilwoman Diglio, anything else with regards to
Animals
definition?
running at large, because we have several cat colonies in this town, and we know about them from the ordinance we had to pass previously. Those cat animals, even though they're colonies, they're basically feral, and they're running around. People are trying to domesticate them so that they can be moved to farms, but how will this affect those people?
Yeah, I mean, it says, no person shall permit any animal regularly housed on his or her property or in his possession to run at large. So with regards to
They're not
the
in possession.
feral cat colonies, they're wild and at large already, not necessarily on private properties, right?
I think it has the same goal, where if someone has a domestic cat that's theirs, we don't want them to allow it to become a feral cat. And I think it goes along with that. And I don't think the person who's helping with a colony falls into this.
Well, that same person's also not permitting those cats
Right.
either. So taking ownership and or possession. Is that correct, Lorraine? They're
Yeah,
not.
didn't we pass, we did the ordinance
Yes.
with the licensing of cats, right?
Right, but that didn't include the feral cats.
Technically, if you feed a feral cat, according to the state of New Jersey, it becomes yours.
Well, and therein lies the other issue.
There lies the issue.
Under the ordinance we just adopted, under 5736, we do define feral cat as a cat not licensed and free roaming. So I think that's where we go. We want someone to take care of their cat and not allow it to be the free roaming. So I think they're
Right, and that's what I was making reference to. The people that are taking, the feral cats aren't licensed. But yes, you're right. We have people that are taking care of the feral cats, which is, I think, a separate issue. This ordinance is specifically referring to those that are permitted, and that's another issue, because I know our clerk knows of many animals that aren't permitted in the town, and they should be, but those that are permitted and housed on their property. It's not that the feral cats are excluded, but they're not part of this ordinance. I think they're duly covered under the former ordinance.
right, our feral cat ordinance.
Yeah. Councilwoman Diglio, what else from your end?
Okay. where do chickens come into play?
Well,
And rabbits, I mean, we have domesticated rabbits. I had a rabbit that was 20 pounds and used to run around the yard all day long and then go in its cage at night. Where do animals like that? I mean, we had chickens in here before. I know people who have chickens that are domesticated and run all over the yard. So where do animals like that fall in? Because you have 4-H clubs with people that domesticate those type of animals.
Sure, and I think rabbits would fit under the definition of domestic animals, and what happens under any zoning ordinance is we can't include everything. So in drafting this, that was the issue, is do you include pigs up to 25 pounds? Do you include, I mean, if you're talking about Flemish giants, they get up to a certain weight, right? It gets gray quickly, so in zoning,
Flemish
we
giants
typically
are
can't.
pigs?
no, they're rabbits.
Oh, those rabbits.
They get very big.
Okay.
Well, it does say including among other
Right.
others, right? So that's
Rather-
kind of your catchphrase.
Yeah, because if we listed everything, then the next one's gonna come along, it's gonna be the peacock, it's going to be the pigeon, or if we can't include it all.
The service.
Okay, so, good point, I just heard you say that. How do service animals fall under the ordinance, or how are they cared for under the ordinance?
So it would be a domestic animal raised to live in or about the habitation of humans. So a dog would be a service animal, domestic animal. That's permitted,
Living in the home.
living in the home.
But there's like a state designation, a state license for a service animal, I thought.
I don't,
Is there
there's a
not?
lot on
Like
domestic
everybody's
versus
like-
therapy versus, there's a lot.
Everybody designates their dog like a service animal so they could take it like to hotels and stuff and people can't tell them any different.
I'm confident all dogs would be considered domestic animals as long as they're in
Right.
the house with the humans.
Yeah, but it goes back to
Animal
the
probably
dogs
isn't
aren't
too
allowed
far
in
from their human at any time.
lots of places, but they are if they're service animals, right?
But what if we get into the question that other animals are claimed to be emotional support?
I think it's safe to
animals?
say if something was licensed as a service animal, right, it would definitely fall under the
Well,
category domesticated.
There's
because-
license and then there's service, right? I think, I mean, you can get a service dog from Seeing Eye that's licensed and certified and has been through the training, and then you could get a mental health professional to provide paperwork to someone to say that you're in need of a service animal and that your dog, as a pet, provides that emotional support therapy. So there are some differences between what's covered under ADA
Right.
and,
And this ordinance is not intended to address either of those.
right.
Okay.
And you would still have some sort of paperwork to back up.
Yeah, it's a separate
Yeah.
animal.
Okay.
So,
So, Councilwoman Diglio, other questions or thoughts on this? So, right now, I just want to get questions about the ordinance, and then we can kind of come back to some discussions. Deputy Mayor Flynn, any questions on the ordinance as it's written?
Not at this time. I'll have some comments as we conclude a little bit.
Okay. Councilman Dixon?
Not any questions at this time.
Okay. Councilman Schlaffer?
No, I was just glad to see that there is a limit on how close or far it can be from somebody else's property.
So, that you bring up a good point, right? Because part of the,
That'll actually prevent the smallest lots from having it then.
okay, so say that again.
Almost all lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So say that again.
Is that having the
200 feet.
200 feet kind of perimeter from any property line would prevent most residential properties from having these, from essentially from having livestock at all. Because most of our lots aren't going to have 200 feet in any direction.
No building or structure used for shelter or enclosure of fowl, game, horses, or farm livestock shall be closer to any property line than 200 feet. And I think if Jessica were here as our town planner, she would say that that section is consistent with other property line provisions that we have for other structures, whether it's,
Totally fair.
Setback.
yeah, the setbacks, and we have setbacks around garages, we have setbacks around fences, we have,
Yeah.
all of that kind of thing. So that's consistent.
She worked on this.
Which I wanted to
Yeah.
point out too.
I guess, I mean, the question is, I mean, like, what's the difference between rabbits and chickens? Like, I mean, that, I guess, is, like, people breed rabbits around here.
One
Or
is a
potbelly
mammal
pigs.
For food,
And one is an avian
and for
species,
pets.
so it's pretty cool.
they're just, what?
I was teasing. Said one's a mammal and one's of the avian
Yeah.
variety, so fundamentally pretty different.
Well,
But yeah, no, I
like 100 years ago, they were like, Tyson was deciding whether
mean,
they
some
wanted to
people-
go down the chicken route or the
Yeah, the rabbit
rabbit
route.
route. They chose chicken.
So part of the question is whether the animals are kept within the home or outside the house, right?
Yes.
Because if they're outside the house, then there's a structure.
There's a structure which has to be, right. which falls
That's
under
to your
the
point. That's your point.
False.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the
With
main-
that in mind, okay, you have chickens. You have them in a structure. Now, most of our properties in this town, 50 to 75 feet wide by
Right.
maybe 150 to 200 deep. According to this, it would be impossible to have a chicken coop on your property.
Exactly.
That's
So,
correct.
Essentially.
A rabbit cage possibly, if you want to put rabbits in there. I mean, do we want to, I mean, you have,
But rabbits.
Rabbits
fall
don't
under the
count.
domesticated
Rabbits don't count,
animal,
okay.
right.
because section 2 and 3 deal only with, again, agricultural larger than 5 acres, as it exists now.
Say that again?
I'm looking at
There
the
is no
example.
setback for your small residential lots. The setback is for your agricultural larger than 5 acre properties.
The 200-foot setback?
now I'm a little
If you
confused.
keep
Is
your
this a-
rabbits outside, it wouldn't fall under the second part because it's not fowl, game, horses, or
Yeah, but
livestock.
what if you
So
have
that's-
chickens?
That's our coverall for,
We don't
Chickens
have a
are
setback.
fowl, and people do have them. So does that mean, okay, now that we want to pass this, they have to get rid of their chickens?
Well, that's why
why-
that's why I said earlier,
What your
some of the,
policy is.
right, what's the policy? Are you going to grandfather? Are you going to change it to allow
Small
and
lots.
additional animals up to 1 to 3? That's what Ursula was saying, is that there
Yeah.
are examples that
It's like-
exist of
For personal.
variations.
1 to 3, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you have to decide,
Right.
if
Right.
any, if yes.
So it sounds
I
like
would say,
quantity
yeah, because there are people that
would be
raise
on board.
chickens for eggs, for fresh eggs,
for
and
personal use, right?
Yes,
So
for
then,
personal
In
use.
which case, you're on board with making an amendment to that,
definitely.
to shrink the.
and we could be specific and say hens only, not.
You can, for the
Can
noise
be that
reason.
specific.
Yep. And just for example, in the T3, the side yard is 7 feet and the front yard is 20 feet. So it is much smaller than the 200
Right.
in the residential. So you can incorporate by reference the existing accessory building setback. That's a way to do it, if we want to have setbacks
Yeah, yeah.
for in those residential districts.
Right, and limit it, but then, I think 1 to 3 is a reasonable.
Well, there's been a big digression in the conversation, so now we're talking about,
The number of chickens.
now we're talking about going
Allowing
back
or
to
not
the
allowing them.
domesticated animal portion and then including fowl in that domesticated, because you'd have to do that in order to get it away from the 200-foot rule.
Right, because, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and then define fowl, because there are certain towns that will carve out roosters,
Turkeys, roosters,
turkeys.
Guinea hens.
Pheasants.
guinea
Yes,
hens.
so-
Yeah,
Guinea hens.
people have.
Right,
Fowl.
so we're,
for
it's two
chicks.
different things.
Right.
Because right now, okay, so just to summarize again, right now, fowl and other farm animals are only cared for under the provisions if you have 5 acres or more, and then if you have that is where the setbacks for the structures come into play. For everyone else, it's the allowance of domestic animals, and domestic animals right now are defined as you see on page 1.
I don't think it's 5, where does it say 5 acres?
No, it's not in this one. It's making reference to the other,
Yeah, it's not listed here in this.
because these are the changes. Remember, there's all these other.
It's 32028.
Yes.
So the question is essentially, do we want to add?
The original says
The
5 acres.
question is if
too.
you want to
It does, I'll
expand
find
the definition
Right.
Domestic.
of domestic animals
Potentially include.
and to include fowl, and if that's the case, are you
What kind of
defining
fowl?
the
Type.
fowl's type
Type
and number?
quantity.
Correct.
Can I show you an example in there?
Yes, please.
Okay, so-
I just wanted to make sure everybody was having the conversation to make sure we're on the same page. Correct.
On
Would
any
you like to see?
lot at least, so the 5-acre thing's going out the window, being replaced by the 200-foot for
For domestic animals.
for the keeping of outside animals in enclosures of fowl, game, horses, or farm livestock.
But my question is, if we change the definition and allow chickens, are they inside or are they outside? And then how's the whole coop thing? Well, they wouldn't be subject to the same thing because they're subject to the other lot lines because now they're domestic animals. It's changing the definition. Dan was just clarifying,
Yeah.
well, in terms of the
Do you want
outdoor
a sample,
structures.
Tom?
Right, that
Do you want a
is,
sample?
that's what I'm
I'm
stuck
looking at the
on.
Boonton one that I had mentioned to you earlier.
I'm game for having.
It's
to go up to
303-55.
10s are personal use.
For Boonton, I have section 80,
Yeah, just egg laying,
chapter 80, animals.
because that'll give you a dozen a week. Five eggs.
I mean,
Right there, under poultry?
Yeah, chickens, roosters, caprins, hens, ducks, geese, pheasants, turkeys, pigeons, guinea fowl, or all other fowl. That's how they define poultry.
And this is their residential, right?
They have rabbits, guinea pigs.
I definitely can't read that.
So this ordinance you have here, do they allow poultry on small ones? And is there?
Yeah,
a
I'm trying to see if it's in this or a different section.
It's 303-55.
Yep, they allowed, I think it was up to 5.
Up to 5?
Regardless of the lot size?
That's what I'm trying to
Okay.
Five one egg.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
The average is like
What was
5
it
eggs.
supposed to be?
303-55.
And it's hard to say, I mean, we're not Wantage, we're not Freedom, we're not Green. I mean, our lot
Right.
sizes are small.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, like 3 is a good max, but then the question is, do we want
It was a different section.
to open something up? You know, for somebody who has a quarter acre lot or something, to actually have a hen house on it.
I have 2/3 of an acre lot, and I'm pretty sure I'm not 200. I could never put something.
No, I know.
I have
That's
200
what I mean,
and I
is-
couldn't.
is-
I thought it was an 80 or so.
That 200-foot would not allow me to put.
No, like
Yeah, I missed
No,
it.
and I have
I had a certain
over an
number.
acre and
Number.
two.
Yeah.
And Helen's, we talked about
Aquanics
it, and
does.
Helen's yard would not be.
Aquanic has the number.
Yeah, I think I have a relatively large lot for the town. And I could only put in
Chapter
one
067.
Because the one corner butts up to state land, so that would be a nice spot. It's 200 feet from anybody else. Mine's 150 feet long.
I could off the front and the back. Not on the side, though.
Yeah, I'd like to see what their limitations are, like an example. of-
Aquanic allows up to 10 female chickens on residential lots up to 3 acres. Roosters and...
So 3 acres and less, so any size.
Yep.
And the smallest one can have up to 10 hens.
Who's that?
Aquanic?
Oh, Pequannock.
Have border towns, that's like 1/3.
We'll have another public session. Thank you.
Remember, one of them had limit, it was 5. 5 was the
I
limit.
think it was Wooten. I mean, because you have to think about towns that have similar lot
So you
sizes.
can't look at Harding and Minden.
Yeah, Wantage, you can't, yeah.
Those are very different.
Andover Borough is 5
Andover Borough limits 5
hens.
of hens.
Hens.
I just know that I was woken up every morning very early for 2 weeks by a rooster.
That was your choice.
Was in another country. Okay, so, right, that's the conversation is, are we going to change the definition of domestic animals? Broadening the definition? And if we are, will there be limitations, exclusions, grandfathered, et cetera? Do we have any idea in the town what the current fowl census might be? I mean, they're not permitted as in not allowed, not permitted as in filed with the clerk's office like a dog or a cat should be. but do we have any idea?
It's only come up a few times, and it wouldn't go through Lorraine, it would go through Kathy, so only a couple instances that I'm aware of.
We only have a couple of,
So, I mean, I'm in
So
favor of
that's
people
what it is.
raising their own food.
Me too,
I have a
absolutely.
garden, I've had it for years. My opinion is that if it's gonna be allowed, it needs to be highly regulated, because we don't want roosters running around the street. I mean, it was only a couple years ago, and everybody in this town remembers, that the gateway to Newton on 206 had a house that kept, or unkept, livestock. They used to run across the road, and it'd be like, "Welcome to Newton," and there would be like a flock of chicken and a goat.
well, we had
and a
accidents.
rabbit
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And I mean, and to be quite honest with you, that didn't make like that. I wasn't like proud to say I'm from Newton, and we support urban farming because of that. I mean, it was so you do.
Yeah, that's
you know,
big fair line.
we don't say how people can keep the animals. They should be kept, but they can get out.
But you guys, I mean, you both just said raising animals for consumption. That is, the definition
consumption,
is
but for-
domestic animals, which are pets. They're not raised for sustenance.
They could be.
It's an enforcement issue, right? So as long as they're domestic animals that are complying with your sheltering and your setback and your waste requirements, that's really all you can enforce, really.
So for me, I'd be fine including chickens into domestic, but I think the lowest you can bring that sort of property barrier down from 250 feet.
Well, it wouldn't
wouldn't
matter.
If you define
No,
it
if you're defining it as
then
domestic,
it's-
then it wouldn't matter.
Then there's
Yeah,
no
but
permitting.
But that's what I'm saying, is I think that you would have to put minimum, I think you'd have to put 50 feet.
No, you would raise them up into section.
I'm not saying that they have to be, like, whatever it is, if we're gonna allow people to keep chickens on lots smaller than 3 acres, whatever, I think that the coop has to be 50 feet
Oh,
from a property line.
They might keep it in the house, then coop isn't an issue.
Right. So what happens is by changing the definition of domestic animals, it's not subject to the agriculture part of the ordinance, which cares for the 200-foot property line for the shelter of those animals.
Right.
Makes sense? So what you're suggesting perhaps is that if
Yeah,
we
'cause we're
are going to
changing
include
definition,
them,
we would
we would
have
now
We'd
include
have to,
a section
A
about
subsection.
the
how they be kept.
Structure.
Right, because if we're already gonna change the definition to include poultry, we might as well change it to also include those regulations for limit on number and the space requirement.
Standards for keeping chickens.
Right, essentially.
okay, that's interesting.
Right, because that's the
A
main, the main
garden
concern is
doesn't
chickens.
become a nuisance, though. And I
No,
just-
not necessarily. I mean, there's
no. So what are your? What is your? I'm curious.
Well, I was just going to say, a garden doesn't become a nuisance, but potentially housing chickens on your yard could be.
Or pigs, or-
pigs or whatever, could become a nuisance to neighbors. So I just don't know how we could incorporate some regulations to try to keep regulations on that too, if there's any sort of excessive.
so we have a noise ordinance, right?
If noise rents, you put a limit on the number of whatever it is.
So what does that do for enforcement wise? I mean, if neighbors are complaining,
File something with the court if they have an issue with the neighbor. You know, you got three issues. Do you want to change the definition? How do you define? How do you quantify? Those are your three questions. Don't. It's complicated, but don't overcomplicate it at the same time. You have to make a policy decision if you want to include fowl as pets. If you say no, that's legitimate. If you say yes, that's legitimate, right? There's no right or wrong. It's policy. Then how do you define fowl? Because there's many definitions. You might want to eliminate certain ones or include certain ones. And then quantity. Right
Yeah,
now,
like
remember
something
we tried to quantify dogs and cats, how well that went years ago. So now, what most reasonable people would say, you don't want somebody to have as many chicken as they do with dogs.
cats or
Cat.
dogs, right?
But it's perfect.
Yeah, because like something like a guinea hen, you'd have to have a full enclosure so it wouldn't fly out. So like, I wouldn't be for allowing guinea hens within, because they'd be in the street all the time.
They always are. They walk around in big flocks, eat ticks.
Yeah, no, I would love to have them for my property just to get ticks off, but I also know that when I used to have them growing up, they were constantly in the street. So that's why I wouldn't be game for necessarily including guinea hens amongst it.
No pun intended.
What's that? That
It's a
game?
game for you.
Well, they're foul, so it's fine.
Okay. I'm for including chickens, but putting a limit on them and keeping it chickens, not turkeys, not guinea pig or guinea hens, strictly chickens, no roosters involved, so you don't have 6 o'clock getting up in the morning. But,
Let's try 4.
yeah,
Yeah.
4, okay. Keep it to the chickens, limit to about 5, because 5 is actually a good number when you're having chickens raised. I mean, my son's doing it out in Oregon, and
On how much property?
he's got about the same as I have, only his, instead of going, mine goes this way, his goes this way. So
Okay.
he's wider in the back. But he's got a coop back there, and he's got them penned in, which I even when my grandmother had chickens, they were always penned. They ran free in the pen. They didn't run outside the pen. They ran free in the pen. So I think if you're going to allow the chickens, they need to be at least penned or in an enclosed area. I think that's only fair to the neighbors.
And right now, we only require permitting through the clerk's office for dogs and cats, not these other animals. Okay. Deputy Mayor Flynn?
Well, reptiles and amphibians would be permitted to the state.
Maybe.
When you purchase them. If you purchase them within state lines, you'd have to fill out the permit on the store.
Maybe.
Yeah. There's always the pulse for everything.
I'll go last.
You are last right now.
Yeah.
It's very complicated to allow just chickens, because, I mean, you still have to leave number 2 in there for the 200 feet, because, you know, we don't want fowl, game, horses, or other livestock on small residential lots where
Oh, absolutely.
where the 200-foot provision doesn't come in. So then fowl would be designated as domestic, and then
Or just the chicken portion of fowl. So then fowl
So the
can
rest
still
of
be in
fowl
there.
can be
Fowl
guinea
except
hens
for
and
chickens could be
Right.
added into
I
2.
mean, I think if I owned chickens, which I very well might at some point in my day, I feel like I'd be a good
Chicken dad.
chicken
Keeper.
host, keeper. But, you know, I just don't think I just really think, it could really go the other way.
So your stance is don't change it. Leave the language as is. Just going down the line here. Yeah. And Sandy, you're saying let's change it, amend it. Pen specifically up to 5,
Right.
cooped and penned.
Cooped and penned.
And I'm for cooped and penned also, but I feel like that's like definitely has to be done regardless.
Yeah, but cooped and I mean, then you're talking about another enforcement, a layer of enforcement. I mean, who's enforcing whether the chickens are cooped and penned?
Definitely Tom.
Code enforcement.
I mean, maybe you make it part of.
And you want to add language about structure.
Right, yeah, because generally speaking, I would imagine that the people are going to either be keeping them, like Tom said, if they keep them in their house, that's their prerogative
If you keep them
anyway,
in the,
right?
if they keep them in the house, then you have less of an issue. But if you allow them on these small lots, you're gonna have a problem with the neighbors
Right.
complaining on a 40 by 100
But what
lot.
I'm saying is,
So,
if you have a lot at all, you need to have it needs to be fenced, because I would imagine you're not just gonna have chickens just in your house, that's it, and everyone live outside your house.
People aren't going to go through like thousands of dollars of home improvements like that to keep a chicken.
I guess it's their prerogative now. If they have to decide, I mean, like, who are we to say what somebody would and would not
I guess.
spend thousands on? And there's people who spend thousands on,
They might.
like,
but-
mobile video games, you know? I could easily see someone spending on a couple thousand for to keep some chickens to have a dozen fresh eggs a week.
That's 3 chickens, I think you had said earlier, right?
3 chickens, yeah, would probably, 3 good chickens would produce a dozen a week,
So,
full-grown hens.
Councilman Schlaffer, you are proposing that we allow up to either 3 or 5 chickens.
I was on 3.
3 chickens, okay,
That
I'm
was
with
my
you.
number.
But then we add some provisions for structures and what that might be and look like. And you're suggesting perhaps cooped and penned, but that as a enforcement component. Councilman Dixon, your position is that based on the property lines, the potential disturbances, maybe perhaps complaints already received, whatever the case may be, that with our lot sizes, it's probably not appropriate to expand the definition, right?
Correct.
Councilwoman Diglio, you're saying that we should allow for provisions of chickens up to 5. We haven't talked about pigs or, what was the other animal that just came up? But,
Well, yeah,
What?
pigs definitely wouldn't fall under, because we were talking about what we had spoken about.
no
was
potbelly pigs.
Specifically. changing the
Actually, there was
Can't have a
someone
potbelly
in this
pig.
town that had a big,
Okay.
full-grown pig on Condon Street, right on the corner of Condon and West End.
Yeah, but I
They
mean,
had a full pig.
again, if they have a pig that's almost like a dog to them, that would still fall under domesticated, right? Because
Yeah.
it's housed inside, it's
That's
fed.
Potbelly pig,
right?
yeah, or,
Yeah.
and they sell them in
Wasn't
pet
it?
stores, I think.
So
They'd
realistically-
be less than 100
I mean,
pounds. too.
realistically then.
So,
someone
Considered
could
a
have
domestic animal.
Right,
They-
someone
they'd
could have
fall
a
under
mini pony
domestic.
that lives inside their house and it falls under domestic.
And Deputy Mayor Flynn, you are also questioning because of the lot sizes, the appropriateness of this, right? So I keep trying to, and I started this conversation by saying, how do we define domestic animals, right? And so I think about the things that are sold in a pet store. If I were to go over to PetSmart, what are the animals that I could buy? Those would typically be defined as animals that can be domesticated, right? Whether you agree or not agree,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So far, our ordinances talk about whether it's the noise ordinance or it's the licensing parts of our ordinances for cats and dogs, cleaning up after your animal, if you walk them, we care for those types of animals. So there are certain months that I could definitely go to PetSmart and buy a chicken, right? Duck, we didn't talk about duck, but
Buy a duck?
Can.
Yep.
yeah, you can buy a duck, but yeah. Easter time. But, so I totally get where the two of you are coming from in terms of, having those animals and talk about sustainability. I mean, and I also think about the fact that Newton is different than a Green or a Wantage or the rest of the municipalities that have large lot lines. And gosh, we have properties that are on some of our streets that don't even have driveways because of how small the lot lines are, and certainly don't have garages, right? And so I think about the application that was just before the planning board about we have no on-street overnight parking on
Woodside.
Woodside, I was gonna say West Side, on Woodside, and, we're making provisions and changes and accommodations for people just to have a parking spot right in front of their house, right? So we have lots of issues with lots. You can't write an ordinance, though, to segregate, this street is allowed this, and this street's not allowed this, like, you can't do that too, right?
Put a
So
lot size limitation, right?
that's what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
right? So in an effort to make some accommodations, but also realize the restrictions that we have,
Right.
I want to
Say
find some
half
common
acre-
ground, right?
Say a half acre lot.
So, Tom, I'm looking at you because I'm wondering if we can do a little more work
Yeah.
on
We
this
should.
with those guidelines, right? How do we perhaps accommodate those homeowners, people that want to have these additional animals for whatever reason, whether it's for eggs or
Yeah, just-
for whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But then how do we also protect the other residences against the noise issues? And how do we think about structures? And then how do we think about the other restrictions and limitations that we have within the town? So I hear very differing opinions, and I hear no direct conclusions. So my suggestion is that we do a little more research and talk to Jessica again. I know Jessica's already looked at this, but with
Some other towns.
with that lens is my suggestion.
Oh.
Are we okay with that?
Yeah, I'm definitely
Yeah?
open to
Okay.
continuing.
So to be continued. And I know that some of the planning board also had similar concerns. I talked to many of the planning board members after the last meeting, and there were strong opinions on all sides as well. Okay? So we'll table that and put that under old business and continue the conversation. Anything else under discussion? Okay, so let's move to the second open to the public section. So anybody wishing to address the council, please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes, and if you have a prepared statement, please provide that to the clerk so she can reflect them in the minutes. Hello.
Hi, Felicia Carson from Elm Street. Just a thought came to me while you were talking about the domestication of animals. Would that make chickens, those lots, tax exempt?
No, they're
No.
not big enough
Okay.
for us.
Right. I just want to say I'm thrilled about the slideshow we saw about the pool. Okay, and I just think we would be amiss, the residents of the town and the council, if we didn't recognize and thank Tracy Pacarella for head spearing that whole idea and having it come to fruition. What I'd also like to say is I'm a newcomer to these meetings. I've enjoyed them. And I know you guys hear a lot of people come up here and talk. It's one thing to hear people talk, but it's another thing to actually listen to what people are saying. And I think it's come to grounds where we've listened to one another, and it's brought organizations, communities together. And I just want to say thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
1 second.
I wanted to say before.
Wait, just want to finish my notes. Thank you. Okay, name and address for the record, please.
Guillermo Marquina from 7 Liberty Street. Bordentown in New Jersey has an ordinance 6/2050, which allows a lot size of minimum of a third of an acre equals 4 chickens, half an acre, 6 chickens, and so on and so forth. As it incrementally goes up, you have more chickens. That's an example that I wanted to tell you guys. And it says no roosters, and we need to require shelter. It's pretty good how they have it. It's 6/2050, if you guys want to look at that. Also, we did.
Bordentown.
Was that?
Bordentown?
Bordentown, New Jersey. My friend lives there. He told me to check it out. My wife is going to talk further about a violation because you have chickens. And so I was just a little confused with because we researched it. We don't do what we did without knowing. So when we researched, the only thing we found was 57, Article 57. So it was like further until we found out there was an Article 32028J. So that we did not want to break the law. That was not our intent at all. And that's still not our intent. So our intent is just to have some kind of a resolution, like what you guys are talking about. That's a conversation we do want to have. And we do agree that we want to have our own food. We want to be able to feed ourselves. And we got rid of our rooster because we understand it's a nuisance. And we get rid of we compost the chicken, the chicken, we compost it and we use it for our garden. That's just the people that we are. That's just what we try to do in our garden. So that's just what I want to say. Go ahead.
This is just some letters from our closest neighbors. I have some curriculum, some pictures of the girls with the chickens, and then some curriculum that you'll see circled, some of the lessons that we've gone through this year and how the chickens,
So if you could just go to the microphone and state your name and address, and then speak into the microphone what you've handed to the council, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Teresa Marquina at 7 Liberty Street, right here in Newton. And I just handed you over some letters that we got from some of our closest neighbors. And also, I'm a homeschool mom, and so I've used a lot of, with the curriculum that we have, we go over families, how they sustain themselves, how they lived in the 18 and 1900s. That's a big part of, a lot of the books that my daughter is reading and that, the younger ones will read. have to deal with that. So I have some samples of lessons that we went over. I also am a Pioneer Girl leader. And so there's some badges that the girls will be able to right away earn, just because we have that in our backyard, as well as the girls in their class can come. A big thing for the reason that we got the chickens in the first place was because I had some health issues, stomach problems, and so I wanted a cleaner source of protein. We also wanted pets, and so we just figured, well, we'll get a pet that can give us back something. We take care of our animals very well. We love them. We've named them. I feel like the girls have, I've just seen them grow and flourish throughout the year as they take care of the animals, as they gather the eggs. They've really become almost totally responsible. You know, all I do is clean the coop because that's gross, and you know. But everything is maintained under the Ordinance 57. We totally comply with that. And I see that there's the fear that people won't, but I think that can be reported. If it's not, you know, neighbors nearby can report that the same way that they reported our rooster, the noise from the rooster and our dog. So anyway, I wanted to say something about the noise too. I know roosters are very loud, so we weren't planning to keep the rooster. But I know that chickens, laying hens, they make maybe 70 decibels of noise, which is just like a conversation that me and you would have. And that's only after they finish laying or if they feel threatened. Our chickens, we've had them for over a year. Most of our neighbors, when I went around and asked them, you know, if they could write a letter or if they were okay with the chickens, they didn't even know that we had them. We do not have that 200, you know, we're right on Liberty Street, so we don't have, you know, we don't meet a lot of the criteria, I guess. But, you know, we keep our coop clean. It's right by a parking lot. You know, we have like them against the fence, which is right on the property line, but it's next to a parking lot. The business that's right there, I don't think they even knew that we had chickens until that rooster, wonderful rooster. So those were some of the things that I wanted to say. What else did I want to speak on? We did, like my husband said, we did research before we got the chickens. We looked online in the town of Newton, and I looked up chickens, backyard chickens, and the only thing that would come up was like Easter egg hunts, and it just nothing really was easily accessible. You know, we do follow that one ordinance that we were made aware of later, the Article 57, 1 and 3, whatever those are. We have a coop. We just bought an enclosure so that they could roam out from the coop, and that has a net over top of it. Even when they were free ranging in our backyard, we had a net in the back. We have a tall fence where the chickens wouldn't escape, and so those are the things. I know that there's a lot of. I sent Tom an email that kind of stated some of the concerns that people have with backyard chickens, and the noise was one of them. And they stated just how loud hens are, which is not, and it's. I mean, they lay eggs once a day, if that. They don't always lay eggs, so you're only hearing that during the day, not at night. At nighttime, you don't hear them at all. Except for the rooster, which I don't think people should have roosters. I didn't even want one. So yeah, I guess that's, the girls are very attached. And I told my daughter that she could say something, but they're very attached. We do have a part of our basement that, this is just to throw something out there and to try and keep our chickens, but we do have a part of our basement that's closed off from the rest of the basement that's kind of underneath steps that go out to our backyard, that we could, enclose them in there at nighttime. I don't know if that would make a difference, and then we could walk them during the day. We're there. The girls are there. They're learning, and they love their animals. So whatever kind of resolution, I hope that it can.
How many chickens do you have?
We have 5.
Okay,
We
thank
have
you.
more, but they've died. So the coops, most of the coops that you get at the store, they can house like 8 it's anywhere between 6 and 10 chickens, and they can stay in that small coop. And then, of course, you would either let them out to free range, or we bought the enclosure, like I said, and that way they could be out. But
Okay, thank you.
go ahead. You have to say your name. Say your name.
My name is Aurora.
Say hello.
Aurora Martinez, and I live at Liberty Street. And I love my chickens. And I don't want my chicken to go away to somewhere else. I'll stay here and get more eggs for a good day.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annabella Martina. I live at 7 Liberty Street. I love my chickens. I take care of them. I care for them. I love them. I even cry when I miss them. I put them in my prayers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nadine Harrison, 17 Linmore Avenue. I think what you're doing with the pool for Hackettstown is great. My only concern is the month of July. A lot of kids go to Merriam till it's noon. Is there any way you can move that time just a little? I probably won't be using it, but I was just thinking, like, there's so many kids that do use the Merriam program. And my other thing is, did anybody, I wanted to know too, if anybody looked into with the crossing guard schedule. Like, I know it's not going to change for this year, but for next year, for the safety of the kids, I really think it should be added an extra 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
agreed to do that,
Okay.
so, yeah. That
I
was-
didn't know because it wasn't mentioned last time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I forgot to, I wanted to call you and let you know that
Okay.
they did that.
We
That
did,
was the only
yep,
concern.
that change was already made, like, the next day with Chief Richards and the crossing guard,
Okay.
yep, yep.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. So Nadine, you were referencing the program at Merriam Avenue that runs until noon for the month of July.
Yes, it's just the
Did
one-
you also say that you're not going to use the bus?
I probably won't. I work Wednesday through Friday, so it would only be Monday and Tuesday. But I probably will let people who don't have cars use it and drive myself, because I know there are a lot of people who don't drive anything. I do have a vehicle. I
Okay.
mean, if there's open, I might use it.
Okay.
Hi, Tracy Paparella, 56 Halsted. I want to thank you for providing transportation, working up a plan for our children for this summer. I think it's wonderful and admirable of you to have pulled that together so quickly. I have had to pull things together for the swim team as well. Almost there, not all the way. We have our facilities and working on getting funding and everything for that. As you know, the Newton swim team originated at the Newton pool. In 1976, the town council actually created the Newton swim team and hired its first coach, Leslie Easter. She was the first coach up at Kittatinny. I've spoken with her. She's now 65 years old, living up in Hamburg. Wonderful woman. She's going to come to our season end picnic, hopefully, at the end of July. But I bring up the swim team because we do intend and hope to return to the Newton pool next year.
So I know Tom mentioned that you have had reports that you said something about May 30th or May 31st. Is that the end of the study?
No. No, May 31st is the geotech borings are taking place.
And do you know how much longer the study will be?
Right now, I'm anticipating that they're going to come in at our first meeting in September with a presentation for everybody. We're going to do Babe Ruth Field next month, and then I didn't want to do anything over the summer because a lot of people won't be around, so that didn't really seem to make sense, you know. So that first meeting in September, which is actually a Wednesday because of the Taste of Newton, I told Suburban that I really like to have everything ready to go for that meeting.
Okay.
So.
And can you just give me an idea, how's everybody feeling? Are you committed to repairing the pool and reopening it?
I think it would be premature. I mean, I don't want to cut into your 5 minutes, but I think it would be premature to make any commitments until we see what the reports are coming back. We know what we thought the issues were based on the surface issues that we knew of, but until all of the rest of the reports come back, we don't have a full scope of all the work that needs to be done.
Okay. All right, I don't want to do this again next year. And I'm sure you don't either. The pool could have been open had it been addressed last summer and had it been properly maintained. Thank you.
My name is Courtney Piper. I live at 98 Ryerson Avenue. I grew up at 99 Ryerson Avenue, and my family has been here. My grandmother is a Piper. My father, Jerry Piper, and Jenny Piper both were of Newton. And we've been part of the community and enjoyed the pool my whole life. I swam on Newton swim team up until 1996, and now my daughter, who is 12, swims for Newton also. And I'm proud of Newton. I've only been to the meetings infrequently, but I wanted to voice how important it was to me to have things that make Newton feel worth being here now that my family's here. So I appreciate that you're working with the community and trying to get that back on track. Newton is a beautiful community, and I think that there are a lot of ways that it feels like it's lost a little bit. And I hope that we're moving toward the improvements, as I know I see new council people and people wanting to make positive changes for Newton. So I appreciate that, and I hope that you know that there are people who have lasting relationships still here, and that Newton is important to us. Thanks.
Thanks.
Maureen Snellen, 30 Plainfield Avenue. I agree, I would like to see the pool open next June. There's many families in town that have chickens. They're not the only family, whether you guys are aware of that or not. I don't know the numbers of how many chickens they have, but people do have them for pets and eggs and I guess even for meat. I'm here today because I actually called Mr. Russo today and left a message. The generators in town are a real problem. Yeah, we lost power for several hours last night, but not enough for generators to be going 5 minutes after the lights go out. Food's not going to go bad in a couple of hours. And I don't know whether we have an ordinance right now where they should be off from 10 to 6 in the morning or something like that, but I could not sleep. And many of my neighbors couldn't sleep. That's why they're not here today. So, you know, I would like to know, and if there isn't, I would like that changed because it really is. I couldn't even open my windows and I still could hear them. So that's a problem. And talking about the crossing guards, the crossing guard that is on Madison and Halsted, she's always assisted by a police officer that pretty much does her job. And when he's not there, traffic backs up from Spring Street all the way to Halsted. She does cross the children as soon as they're out. She doesn't let them wait. So it really backs up traffic. It's a real issue. So I don't know whether you can switch the guards around, give them a different station, see who's better qualified for that area. The guy we had there last year was amazing. I don't know if you're getting frequent phone calls, but all the parents are complaining that it's a real issue. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll close a portion of the meeting. We'll move on to a second round of council and manager comments. Mr. Russo?
Nothing there.
Mr. Sullivan, Councilman Dixon.
Brought up about the TNR program that we did before. I was just wondering, if at some point in the future when there is available time, if we could just get maybe an update from the animal control and how that program is going. That's all.
Yeah, I actually just got, somebody was just complimenting the new animal control relationship with Hobacom. But other than that, I really haven't heard much either. Just making a note. Okay. Councilwoman Diglio?
I have no other comments.
Deputy Mayor Flynn?
So just a quick note about the pool. I think, dwelling on the past is not getting us anywhere. I think the collective effort of the council has shown that we're moving forward with the pool. Whatever has happened in the past as far as, its maintenance. I mean, things age, things need to be done, things need to be maintained. I think the effort that we've shown is positive, that there's collaboration between the communities in the town, the Board of Education, the rec department. I want to personally thank Tracy for stitching the email together with the parties involved. I want to personally thank Tom for acting so quickly when the issue was brought to your attention, that it really was a serious matter and it was addressed very, very thoroughly and very diligently. So I want to thank you, Tom, personally for doing that. It shows that there's a great collaborative working environment between the Board of Education, the Town Council, our manager, Tom Russo, and the Board of Education Superintendent, Dr. Green. So that really came together quickly. Thank you, Tracy, again, because you did articulate that in a way that it was able to get addressed. So, that being said, I think it's time that we just move forward with the pool, and we'll wait for the reports as I see the timeline's already on its way. So that's all I have to say.
Good, thank you. So just a couple announcements. While I was at the parade this weekend, I was walking back with a couple of people, and they asked me to just mention some of the end of the year events that are going on at the schools for the public's information. Specifically, Wednesday, June 12th at Merriam Avenue is Bike Walk to School Day. So they wanted to mention that. At Halstead, the 8th grade promotional ceremony is at Newton High School at 6 p.m. on Friday, June 14th. At the high school, and this is one that she specifically asked me to promote on Thursday, May 30th, is the spring band concert from 7:30. That the band is doing a gently used clothing drive, and those clothing items can be dropped off at the concert. The clothing donation collection will end on June 5th. And she also wanted me to make note that the band has been very much recognized recently in lots of competitions. And so she said that it was going to be a fantastic show. Tuesday, June 4th is the spring chorus concert at 7 p.m. for Newton High School. Friday, June 7th is the Newton High School Choir Coffee House from 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. On Saturday, June 8th, the class of 2020 is doing a car wash fundraiser at McGuire Chevrolet from 10 to 1:30. And I think those are the only other ones that she asked me to mention. And Tom, I know that you've been giving us updates on the firehouse. Do we have a date yet? Okay.
I emailed Corey, I don't have an update. Once I get it from Corey, I'll forward it to him.
Because a couple of the fire department guys were asking me on Monday as well if we knew when they could take occupancy and have their opening ceremonies.
We had to order their appliances, so they have to wait for their appliances.
Okay.
And then they have to work on furniture.
Right.
So they still have some things to pull.
I was excited when the lettering went up on the side of the
Yeah.
building, and
Looks nice, right?
yeah, it does. It's coming along nicely, and again, even despite weather delays on schedule. So I know you'll continue to keep us posted. And then, of course, we mentioned it before, but June 8th is Newton Day, the Little Miss and Little Mister Newton contest, and of course the fireworks and you mentioned the special tribute that we paid to Lexi during the fireworks at the end of the night. But it's a full day. I know the chamber and other groups are working hard on Newton Day. So we'll just hope for good weather and a good turnout, and it will be another great event.
Well, if it is, there is a rain day for the following Saturday, just in case.
Shh. Okay. Just also a reminder that the town is in summer hours, so we have extended business hours on Thursday evenings, shortened business hours on Fridays. And that's particularly important for the clerk's office if you need to get any permits, file any applications, need any records, etc. Right, Lorraine? Is that good? Okay. Any other council manager comments at this point? Anything else for the good of the order? Yeah, the garage sale. Right. Okay. Yes.
Town-wide garage sale, that's the beginning of August?
August.
2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
The townwide garage sale,
Yeah, we
August
already
2nd, 3rd, and
have
4th.
applications coming in, so. August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:54.
I'll second that motion.
So
I'll
moved.
make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Diglio to adjourn at 8:54 with a second by Deputy Mayor Flynn. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank